Hey ladies, so tonight's topic, strong from the inside out, we'll be talking about estrogen contraceptives and how that impacts or how they impact bone health. So really important topic for us to discuss. I love doing these deeper talks about things that we should be considering alongside our own individual health and fitness journeys. So, bone health and osteoporosis. So, peak bone density typically happens around age 30, and after menopause, bone density can drop by 1 to 2% per year if untrained. One in two women over 50 will experience a fracture linked to osteoporosis. Strength training and impact loading are the only proven ways to build bone strength naturally. So it's really important that we kind of think about, yes, there are some sort of negatives that can happen, but we can do something about it. And that's the idea of these calls, is to try and empower you to stay strong, mobile, and just have that confidence through every stage of life. So you don't feel your bones getting weaker until you do. So typically, what this means is that, again, you don't know that your bones are getting weaker until you actually experience a fracture or a break or something. So the issue that we tend to kind of face as women, especially when we think about the impact of lifestyle, whether it's been family life getting in the way or careers or just generally the world and the society that we've grown up in as well, and the impact that's had on us as individuals, and then our need to kind of work towards sort of, and not saying everyone's like this, but again, some of us women end up chasing fat loss or ideals of toning. But the unfortunate thing is, although these are the goals, there's not really much thought nor education about what's happening underneath the surface. So things like bone density and muscle mass, they are the real markers of longevity. And we are starting to think and talk about this stuff. And whether that's because there's more evidence and there's more, we've got a really positive, lovely side of social media where people and researchers and physiologists are able to kind of talk about these really important topics for women, an area that's often been kind of like lacked, if you like, within the whole health and fitness industry itself. Um, so yeah, that's the idea with us kind of really talking about it now. Uh, and also just to remind you that yeah, we are training for confidence because we want the aesthetics. We want to look good and we want to feel good and we want to drop body fat. We want to build muscle. We want to do all these things, right? But it's also really important for us to understand, again, the protection that we also need to put in place. And again, I'm talking about longevity, but it really is important. So the bone density and the muscle mass are really key. They're key markers or real markers for longevity. So you've got things like your health span versus your lifespan. That is why longevity matters, because we are helping you ultimately, operate better and have a longer health span as opposed to just living longer. We want to be, vibrant and energized and strong throughout these years as well. And yeah, just a sort of a reminder, although we cannot stop aging, we can change and manage how we age. That's the real sort of powerful note here. And the goal ultimately is to stay strong, capable, and independent for as long as possible. And when we are thinking about estrogen, it's not just this fertility hormone. It's actually our body's kind of biggest protectors as well. It does change again, whether, again, there's reasons from contraception or you are experiencing perimenopause or menopause. So it's really important that we kind of think about all the other areas within this as well, and understanding how recovery, building strength, and again, just how this all kind of helps us overall manage this for sure. Okay, so here we have a graph, and this again on the left side kind of talks about bone mineral density over your lifespan. So from here you can see that peak bone mass, well, it typically kind of occurs sort of late teens to 20s. This can remain stable, the peak bone mass, throughout our 30s and 40s if we are eating well, eating enough, and we are training well as well. If you if you do not resistance train and you do not give your body adequate energy so that you're, let's say for example, you're always working in a deficit, then there is going to be an accelerated bone mineral density drop. It's going to drop. Okay. So then we need to think about estrogen as well and how this kind of affects us as women, right? And so obviously it says here estradiol. Estrogen is a part of that. So if we kind of think here, you sort of hit your menopause, sorry, your menstruating years here. Again, here you've got your sort of, typically healthy cycles. Again, there will be some disruptions within this, and that's what the red dots are for. Nothing really to worry about here. This is sort of, again, sort of things change, let's say, if you become if you have amenorrhea, so if you have actual menstrual cycle disturbances. Of course, there's reasons why that may happen. And again, things like the hormonal pill can affect things, pregnancy as well. And then obviously, as we kind of like come in towards sort of 40s and onwards, we have these sort of disrupted cycles occurring. This is our perimenopause. And then we have actual menopause, and then that's when your cycle stops. So the key thing to note here is that when estrogen dips, so when we know that it dips, this is typically, as you can kind of see here, this is where you are going to start to have bone loss outpacing the bone building. So there is always this turnover of bone formation. It is always happening. However, the loss starts to outweigh or starts to take over the bone building. And that is why we need to think about how muscle and movement become our medicine. Exciting stuff, hey? So this is again just what I just kind of said on the last slide. So peak bone mass, teens to 20s, stable in your 30s and 40s if you are eating enough and you are training well. The decline typically starts around perimenopause, so 40s and 50s thereafter, and accelerates without resistance training or adequate energy. Okay, so the role of estrogen beyond fertility. So yes, again, we know why it's there. Sorry, that's the fireworks. We know that it's important in terms of our fertile years. And obviously, when we are having things like contraceptives, it's got a role there as well. So beyond fertility itself, stimulates osteoblasts. So it's building and preserving bone. And again, this helps to stimulate those osteoblasts. You don't need to learn all these different words, but these are words I kind of learned throughout my education. Supports muscle recovery and collagen formation. So you've got muscle repair, collagen, tendon strength. And yes, also reduces the osteoclast activity, which is the bone breakdown. influences things like and regulates mood, sleep, motivation, and metabolism. So again, it affects how we store fat and use energy. So it can influence the metabolism as well. So when the estrogen level drops, so there'll be again why this happens. It can be due to contraceptive interventions. It could be due to stress, and the obvious, it can be due to age. So when we are heading towards perimenopause. And the thing is, when this kind of starts to happen, we will start to notice other things. And this is what I said, that you can't feel bones, right? But you'll start to notice things like slower recovery, joint pain, belly fat, poor sleep, and your moods is dipping as well. So again, this is where, again, the hormones are going to shift, especially when we are thinking sort of perimenopause. It's really important that we think about our habits kind of becoming our safety net. There you go. So, contraception and bone health. Okay. So, you're again, not every woman takes contraception, and again, as a intervention, especially during our menstruating years, some women rely on very different types of things. So, firstly, you've got the combined pill, which is synthetic estrogen and progesterone. And this may support bone density, but it can mask natural hormone rhythm. Progestin only options are things like the mini pill, implant, and the injection, and these can suppress the natural estrogen. So therefore, the it can lower bone density over a long period if for example, your lifestyle isn't supportive. So again, there are things that we can do in our life that can be detrimental. So it's not again just that. Bone health is typically just affected by the estrogen. There are other factors as well that we'll talk about. But there you can see again why these are discussions that you will have with your what will you have them with your family planning clinics or your GP, for example. These are things that they will discuss with you. It's only my job to just present you the information that I've been given. But yeah, typically, again, it might be why they use this sort of synthetic estrogen uh, for the combined pill. And again, that's again personal to you. And then also you've got the copper IUD, which is non-hormonal, and your natural cycle is preserved, but it does have other side effects. As if any of you have ever tried it, everybody's different, right? So, what can we do? How can we, again, empower ourselves or try and control things around using contraception? So, it's not to say, oh, you've got to stop contraception. It's obviously there because it supports your lifestyle, and it's a choice that you can make on your own, and you should be empowered, and you know you should be able to do what you want with your body. You should have the autonomy over what you want to do and what you choose to do. But it's just good to understand how we can support our body whilst we are on contraception. So this is where the habits are going to matter more, because we can't control what's going on with those hormones per se. So, yes, we can strength train 2 to 4 times a week. We can bank in our protein. We can actually supplement with calcium as well. So, again, especially important if you are at risk of poor bone density. Vitamin D, again, can help the absorption of calcium. And then obviously you've got things like omega-3 and magnesium, which also help support bone tissue and support joints as well. And it's important to understand that lifestyle is the lever that is going to help balance your hormones. So, what kind of changes occur, right? So, when we think about the aging itself and the adaptation that's going to be occurring, aging is a normal process, but there will be adaptations that your body starts to create. So, and this is the thing, this is where I want to kind of shift the perspective. So, also when we're thinking about aging, it's not about us slowing down as we get older. It's kind of thinking that, perhaps maybe the goal doesn't necessarily change. It's maybe more the strategy around how we do things. So, what happens in peri or post menopause? This isn't a special spelling mistake, it's bone resorption formation. Okay, so what this typically means is that the bone tissue is being broken down faster than it is being built up. And that starts to result in this net loss of bone mass. So we kind of discussed that a little bit at the beginning. And recovery and sleep will need more attention. Strength training, high protein, and smart fueling are going to slow down the decline dramatically. And muscle is going to act as your metabolic organ and support that bone as well, and bone support system. Okay. So it's not just happening that you're losing bone and muscle just because of aging. Typically we start to lose them because we stop using them. So as I kind of go back to the slides that we talked about before, with this sort of peak bone mass. Now, again, notice that I've said, again, if the adequate energy is available. So again, around here, we can really start to kind of keep and normalize that bone mineral density the longer we kind of feed and drive and change the inputs we give our body. But again, we can't necessarily change the age that it's going to happen, but we can stop it happening from earlier. How about that? We can sort of support the aging process and what may happen in future. Okay. All right. So now when we think about training through the decades, we are all on the same path here. We're still thinking about the same inputs, just applying a smarter strategy here. So this is the thing, as we start to think about the decades after the 30s and the 40s, we don't suddenly need to have a completely different plan. It's all still the same principles. And it's not aging that's the issue. It's actually the underloading and potentially the undereating that may happen in those later decades. So this is why I will always continue to run home, why you should be lifting, you should be walking to help with that impact loading, you should be eating enough protein, and you should be challenging your body. I'm not sure how much you know about my career span, but I did spend quite some years working in multidisciplinary physiotherapy. And what I mean by this, I was working in the gym with the again with the understanding that it was a lot of what we were doing was working with active agers. So again, rehab as well. So there was lots of injury prevention going, a lot of athletic performance, lots of rehabilitation. But there also was another key area was also this sort of active aging. So I used to run a community class at the time, and actually even years after I worked at this place, when I started working purely for myself, I started working with older, aging individuals. So a lot of what we were doing was strength training, resistance training, working on things like, so I'm going to show you on the next balance here as well, working on things like, again, balance as well, working on, the resistance training, as I said. Unfortunately, I didn't have much intervention in terms of their nutrition because everything was just about physical activity at that point. And we also weren't really able to intervene or manage things like recovery and sleep. And this is why online coaching is so beneficial, ladies. So if you do have family members, females that are sort of in their 50s and 60s as well, or some of you on the program are in your 50s and 60s, this is more reason why you need this intervention and this support. So when we think about the core principles, in terms of what we should be focusing on is as we age, our body still needs to respond, or it will respond to stimulus. It's just gonna be asking for some smarter recovery and thinking about our 40s, where our main focus is again building the muscle, the bone, hitting our daily protein target, again adding in 1 to 2 again areas where we are focusing on things like mobility and balance. Believe it or not, within your program, anytime that you are, so there's always very key frameworks around mobility within the session, but the balance you might not know that you're doing sometimes, but typically it will happen with things like single limb or staggered stance. Again, that's where the kind of balance comes in as well. And then obviously we're doing things like helping you manage your stress to support the recovery and the sleep. 50s, we're still thinking about the same thing as well. We want to prioritize some more nutrient around training as well. So that becomes a little bit more important. You can't start training fasted and expecting outcomes. Again, the importance around things like mobility and balance will increase. And again, as you come into your 60s as well, we are sort of maintaining these things as well. And arguably, as you go into late 70s, 80s, beyond, your need for protein massively increases, especially if you think about any elderly family members or people in your life that you might know. They start to actually struggle with things like the hormonal responses around hunger. So it's just really important that we kind of understand how all these things are still key features throughout life as well. Okay, so safe doesn't mean going small, it means strong with intention. And yeah, that's the thing. Again, we're not thinking about becoming more fragile as we get older. We are adaptive. Our bodies are very adaptive. I think I've kind of mentioned that already. And here we go. When we're thinking about nutrition for strong bones and muscle, we want to think about feeding our frame. So we're not just thinking that strong bones just happen because you drink milk. They actually occur and they are built through minerals, through muscle as well, and how we load our muscles and movement too. So protein builds muscle and helps support the bone matrix. Calcium, again, there are other areas we can get this from, things like tofu, again, calcium-setted tofu, fortified milk. We'll have some leafy greens, things like sesame as well, vitamin D, K2. Again, the reason why we potentially might want to supplement with some of these things is, again, it's going to help that calcium absorption. Magnesium, it's going to help support sleep, bone and muscle. Omega-3s are the stuff to help reduce inflammation. Okay. So it's really important that we think about protecting what carries us. So this was literally all about bones, right? It was about strong bones and why it's important. Again, this is why I've got the last slide here actually. So I want us to kind of think that fat loss is a phase of our life. It's not a lifestyle. Nobody should be living their entire life working towards fat loss. So this is why it's really important that we think about phases and we think about, and it is possible. A lot of these things do have a heavy a heavy weight on in terms of, the mindset, the lifestyle pressures, the juggling and trying to do everything else that might make it a longer situation, but you shouldn't be doing it decades at a time and going, that's all I need to do. We do need to, once we achieve the fat loss and we get to your desired goal, then we need to start rebuilding calories. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want to start rebuilding our metabolism, because there is metabolic adaptation that will start to happen as we start to drop weight. So we need to rebuild the metabolism. We need to try and help support our hormones and our health, our bone health as well. If you are eating in deficits your entire life, then you are going to be depleting, the energy stores and also even your bone strength as well. So, and this is the thing that actually, when we are thinking about fitness and improving health, it's not just about shrinking. We want to get to a stage where we start to rebuild ourselves as women so that we can, grow and we can thrive. And also understanding that things like muscle, movement and nourishing ourselves, they don't have an expiry date. These are things that we should be continually working on. And maintenance is strength, okay? So when we are looking at maintenance phases, this is not like a regression in terms of what's going, yes, the scale may come up slightly, but there will be new, different lean tissue that has been prioritized. So don't be scared at those points when the scales start to increase. It doesn't just mean that you've suddenly become, a fat mass. You've actually spent time building strength, you're building lean muscle tissue, and it also allows you to get stronger as well. Um, yeah, so this is a thing. And, you know, when we think about the maintenance phase, can often be the hardest part because again, you've taught yourself to kind of chase the deficit, right? But in terms of sustaining the result, that's also massively important. So, yeah, we need to be refueling so that, so that, again, retraining, everything is good. And then also we've got this sort of reverse dieting as well, or even refeeding. This still needs guidance. Typically, what I'll see is when people go through fat loss phases, I've done this in the past myself, like quite some time ago, you suddenly resort back to old ways and habits. So if you aren't being guided through that and you just go back to where you were, there are two ways. You can either carry on trying to keep losing and being in a deficit, or you can go, I'm trying to maintain and actually overshoot in the other direction. So it's really important that you understand that the reverse dieting is actually needs more guidance because you do need to understand how to do that and you need to have the support as well. But yeah, and increasing food, it's going to help improve your recovery. Again, niggles and injuries and stuff, they start to heal during that point. Again, your mood starts to improve and increase because you've starting to eat more food and your bone density starts to rebuild as well. So it's really important that we consider these things. So yeah. hopefully that's kind of, again, giving you some food for thought over different areas and spectrum of health. Again, these are topics that you girls present to me and you tell me that you want some more information on. The idea with these is not to make you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? But to empower you and just to know that what we are doing, it's about serving us long term as well. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, message me privately for us to kind of continue on this chat or drop it into the group and let us know your biggest takeaways from watching this video. Thanks, ladies. See you next time.